down the line. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Oh, all right. Welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And yes, your eyes do not deceive you. It's my face you're seeing on here. And yes, I am getting old because my mustache is turning white. But today we've got a great episode. We have a panel discussion show where we've got film festival organizers here to talk about how they organize their festivals, why, and what drives them. Because believe me, it's not a very easy task. And I've volunteered at film festivals in the past. And if you think volunteering in a festival itself is exhausting, just wait until you actually get in the driver's seat and run it. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and as always, thank you so much for watching. And let's go ahead and dive in. With me today is Brittany Jackson of the Catfly Film Festival in Asheville and Dara Sanders of the Alexandria Film Festival in Northern Virginia. Ladies, how are we doing this fine Saturday afternoon?
Great, beautiful weather. Can't complain.
Yeah, it's very beautiful here too. Sorry, my camera isn't on. I actually loaded in a concert earlier today, so I'm looking a hot mess.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I mean, I've had the fortune to interview the both of y'all in the past, so I wanted to do this panel to kind of not only introduce you guys to get to each other, but also get to see a chance to kind of pick each other's brains and learn about what it is that you've learned throughout the years of organizing these film festivals. Because in both of the interviews that I've done with you, it's not easy. Like, I've walked away just asking myself, why do people keep doing this to themselves year after year? Because it's not one of those things where you kind of invest a little bit of your time and you get a huge return, at least monetarily wise. It's one of those things where sometimes you lose more than you get in, and yet there's still the satisfaction of knowing I've done this and I'm proud of it. And you know what? I think I'm going to try it again next year.
Right.
So I actually did come up with a few talking points. So I do want to just go ahead and get started here. But before we do, Dara and Brittany, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves to everybody and to each other, and kind of just give us an idea of who you are and where you're coming from. Either one of you can start. Doesn't matter.
Okay. I'll start. I'm Dara Sanders. I'm the chair of the Alexandria Film Festival. I've been with the festival now. This is my 8th year. I was not around for the inaugural year of our film festival, which at the time was run by the city of Alexandria. But I've kind of been involved initially as a judge/volunteer, right? Judge the films. Then I kind of got to step up doing programming, and then vice chair, and then ultimately chair. So I kind of worked my way up and was able to kind of see some of the changes in the festival, more things we're able to do as we continue to grow and kind of do this kind of outreach in the city. I live in Northern Virginia. The festival is not my full-time job. We're all volunteers. And I actually work for the government. And I've been in the DC area. I'm from Michigan originally, but I've been in the DC area about 20 years.
Excellent. Brittany, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the Catfly Film Festival?
Absolutely. So I'm Brittany Jackson. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, which is also where Catfly resides. We've been operating since 2017, and we just had our most recent film spring annual festival last weekend. So I'm like fresh on the heels of it right now. But we're an independent film festival catering to folks of the Southeast United States specifically. And mostly low budget independent things. And we usually have a feature spotlight. So we will take one feature per spring cycle. If and some years we don't even do that, but we try to keep the focus on shorts and building community with everyone. Because short film is usually where filmmakers start. So we want to foster those connections early before they, metaphorically grow up into grown-up filmmakers.
Now, what's remarkable about your festival, Brittany, is that with most film festivals that I've seen, usually there's like a group of people who are like running the whole thing. Either they're doing the marketing or getting the volunteers or organizing the panels. This is literally a one-woman show in your case.
It's only recently a one-woman show. Like the first year, I think there were like maybe 6 of us on the team, and we started our festival in our early 20s. So over time, people have like found other interests or decided it was too much work or moved away or, any number of things. So it's just kind of whittled down where I just wanted to keep it alive. So here I am trying to keep it alive, and it's a one-person thing right now, but I think it will grow soon. Um, but before we went live, we were talking about how it was kind of like the elimination diet. Like I needed to do one where it was like solely me, so I could really see where I needed to grow and where I really couldn't do it myself. And having a second me or a second person would really benefit the most. And that experiment did result in some finger wagging from a few close friends being like, Brittany, you got to stop trying to do all of this yourself. That's too much work for one person. And we don't like seeing you tired like this. And I was like, well, thank you for that. You want to help? And they were like, yes.
So yeah,
So
it's like put your money where your mouth is. So let's see you do what I do. Yeah, yeah, totally understand. So
also many hands make like work,
exactly, and the Catfly Film Festival is growing too because from what I've read, it's one of those events where it's starting to get noticed.
Yay,
Not
good.
only North Carolina, but in like parts of the southeastern United States. So I actually do want to start off with some pretty basics questions here. So how exactly do you start a film festival? Because the way I see it's not as simple as waking up one day and deciding, I'm going to start a podcast, or I'm going to start this project or that project here. I imagine it's one of those things where a lot of thought kind of goes into it before actually making the leap. So can y'all talk about that? Either one of you, so you can start.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, Dara, you're on mute.
Sorry, I came on kind of in the middle, so I would definitely defer on actually starting a film festival. I can definitely talk about kind of growing your film festival, which is kind of So I think as I said initially, the festival was sponsored by the city, so they kind of provided all the funding at that time, and it looked very different. Kind of what has happened once we were disconnected from the city is a focus on outreach and growing kind of our volunteer base. For us, I think, because we're in our 18th year now, I think for us, our focus is on growth and outreach to the community so that everyone knows kind of the Alexandria Film Festival exists, one, and also it becomes appointment viewing. So I think for us, kind of the focus is definitely more general when it comes to programming. And we want to keep venues within, the city lines of Alexandria, so it has like a community feel. So right now, I guess, kind of like the main tenets of our festival is it's a homey feel. We don't kind of restrict, for example, the genres we do. We keep it more as a focus on independent film and local filmmaking. And we kind of try and do outreach events throughout the year for awareness. And we focus on good programming. That's, one of our main focuses, because right now, and we'll grow with that. But I think right now, the draw to us is the filmmakers with the local connection and the content. It is there content that people can be interested in. So that's kind of where we are now. The focus is on, grants in terms of money, because that's important too. It's grants and then donations from our supporters and then sponsorships.
I mean, and that's one of the hardest things to do, because even if even if you're working on a volunteer basis, you still need money. That's
Totally.
what I've learned, and it's so. Can you talk about like how exactly do do you plan a budget? How do you kind of generate interest from sponsors to kind of get the money coming in to do what you need to do? Because I can't imagine some of these people and places kind of doing it out of the kindness of their hearts. I mean, they are expecting to some degree some financial compensation in order to do or in order to make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand what you're saying. I think, well, what we do is kind of pitch our festival, as I mentioned, as this community-oriented support local filmmaking festival.
Mhm.
And we show our, well, if we're talking sponsorships, one of the things we do is show our demographic, which is upper class women in I would say from 45 to 65. That's our demographic. And if we can show based on our attendance, based on, the money we made, we can show them that, if we go to like a restaurant or we done car dealerships, that these are consumers that you want, right? Like, so that's mainly the focus of Patty North, who's our executive director. She was there from the beginning of the festival, but she is just amazing with fundraising. And so we like I said, we keep it more local. No, I don't think we have any national brand sponsors. It's all very local, where we pitch our consumer base.
But in that sense, it does give it that kind of small town community feeling as a result.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it does. And even the filmmaker. So like, I don't want to jump ahead, but just to give an example, like, our festival is usually 4 days, like a 4-day swing. And on Thursday, we generally have a dinner for the filmmakers. And this is over, a former chair's house. So that's something that, again, this is more, it's not potluck, it is catered, but the interaction is more personal, right? And so then we have a happy hour for the filmmakers where they can, congregate and talk. And then we, of course, have the closing ceremony. But I think we try and have events for filmmakers where they feel like their access to the executive committee, to all these different members is extremely intimate, kind of. And so if anything happens, we're right there. So I think, that is the theme of what we kind of bring to the table, is that you feel comfortable and taken care of, right? Like I think that's one of the things that whenever we get feedback, a lot of filmmakers say they felt heard, right? And the proximity was kind of better in their opinion. And we're also able to put filmmakers up in hotels. We usually get the sponsorships from like Hilton and Marriott and Comfort Inn. So we're also able to, if you do come in, we don't typically take care of flights, but we will put filmmakers up, and they really appreciate that. And so we try and take care of filmmakers that do attend.
Gotcha. So Brittany, can you talk about from your experience, because you were there from the very beginning? How exactly did you guys plan, and how exactly did you get started in terms of starting this film festival?
Well, I'm friends with a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners, and they have often said like, "Oh, the idea just hit me one day." And honestly, the idea kind of just smacked me in the face one day, and all of my being was like, "I need to do this now." Me and my group of friends who started the festival had worked on a movie in Atlanta. It was some friends about our age. Sorry, my cat is making a huge noise. But we went and we were production assistants on our friend's movie, like they were directing it, and it was a rom-com, and all the actors were stand-up comedians. So they were taking the movie on the road on their own little like film tour kind of situation, where the stand-up comedians would do like 3 of them would do a set, and then they'd screen the movie at the end. And I was like, you guys got to come to Asheville. That's the coolest idea. Like, we'll figure it out. It's all good. And they were like, yeah, totally. And then us filmmakers were like, hey, we have films too. You know, we should just like throw it in there, right? Like, we'll play some of our movies, we'll play this, we'll have the comedians, it'll be great. And then once word started getting out, local filmmakers in Asheville started being like, hey, I have movies too. How do I get in on this? And so it grew into 3 days from just like this one event that it was supposed to be. And we were totally ready to be like the punk band playing to the empty room, like just us there. And then every night completely sold out. Like, granted, they were small venues, but people seemed to really like it, and there was a niche in the community and a need for it. So we filled it, and we made enough money to roll it into the next one. The very first one was funded by my tax return, and then like over the years, we've had various sponsors here and there. Most of them were from places where we worked. Like, one of our folks worked at Wicked Weed, so Wicked Weed helped out. Like, all the merch came from the print shop that I worked at, and we got like crazy discounts on that, which saves tons of money. Because I don't know if y'all have ever bought merch, but oh my god, it's so
Yeah.
expensive if you don't have the hookup. And so that's been a really good revenue source. And yeah, I don't know. It's just been a wild ride. I don't know what makes me keep doing it, because the weeks leading up to it, I'm like, I'm never doing this again. Why am I putting myself through this? Why is this so hard? Why am I doing this? And then like I get there and the filmmakers are so happy and appreciative. Like, people talk about thankless jobs. What I do is not thankless. Everybody wants to tell me thank you 1,000 times, and it touches my heart to such a depth. And I just feel so much love for my community and my film family that I'm like, of course I'm going to do it again.
With your story, it's kind of it seems like the opposite end of what Dara is saying, because yours seems more of like a spur of the moment kind of thing, and it's very very organic, because from what you just said, it was just one of those things where it started off with, hey, let's just do this as a favor for some friends, to where I think you said it was 3 days. It kind of grew into something much bigger. I mean, how did you? I mean, how are you able to roll with that? Because clearly, I mean, with that kind of attention, I mean, you kind of had to stop and think, oh, wow, like I gotta scramble really quickly here.
We started in January, and the first event was in April. So what's that, like 4 months? Yeah. So that's how quickly we basically put it together. There was like a day in January that it hit me, and just like, oh, yep, let's do it now. But luckily we were able to call on a lot of resources in our town to help pull it together quickly. And like, keeping it simple is the best way to do it, I think. Like, just be very straightforward. Because like, I don't know that I could do what I do if I had overlapping blocks, versus I heard my audience to each individual event, and they're never split up from each other. So I feel like that definitely helps with the ease of making it happen, because I don't have more moving parts than I can handle.
Right. Right. Yeah,
Uh,
that actually makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
so can you define? So Brittany, you said earlier, can you define what makes your festival simple? Because, um, because people have like different ideas of what simple is.
Mm, let's see. Well, there are some parts about it that aren't simple. Like, for example, we always change venues. We rarely have the same venue more than a couple of times. I mean, we always do our workshops in the same place, but that's only been in the last 3 years that we found a home for those. But like, versus folks who has like the mini screens in a literal movie theater, I basically go on location to breweries and wedding venues and various places like that. So in that regard, the weekend of is not simple, but I just try to give myself enough time, and I just never make something that I can't physically be at myself. Um, I guess that's how I try to keep it simple. And it's low budget, so I have to keep it simple, but
Yeah.
just keeping staff to a minimum, because the more staff you have, the more people you have. Like, if you only have 5 volunteers, do you need to hire a volunteer organizer at that level? Like, or can you like text your 5 friends who you know really well and they'll come and help? And this past year, I got a lot of benefit from just like, okay, so at the end, there's always 1,000 people that run up to me like, Brittany, how can I help? Brittany, how can I help? And I'm always like, no, 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 no. And this year I was like, put up your chair, please. Can you put this in my car for me? Like, things like that. Like, so learning how to ask for the help you need has been a journey in and of itself for my personal development. But I don't know, the community comes to you if you are good to them, I'd like to think. And if you put on a good event that really brings them all together and they have a nice time, they'll want to help you, because they'll want to see it succeed and they'll want to see you succeed.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And because in both of your cases, you're both working within this the small community, and you want to kind of shine a spotlight to them and make people feel, hey, this is something that's by us and for us.
Right.
So Dar, maybe you can chime in on some of Brittany's points.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, like, merch. I think merch is a big deal. I was actually going to ask her specifically about how attentive you were to the merch and getting like an insignia. I think that was something that we focused on, and we have a graphic designer as one of our volunteers, and so she gives us really good advice on how to spruce up your brand, but also make it recognizable so that each time, I mean, for us, see, we put the film reel over the eye, right? And that's kind of our insignia, but, something we could do is kind of make the colors a bit brighter, but have something that you can associate with us. And, we haven't, as of now, branched out beyond t-shirts. We haven't had hats or totes, but I think that's something that if you can have, your consumer base out and about representing you, right? I think is the idea that increases awareness, that takes care of the outreach that we're continuously doing. I think that for us right now, we're doing 3 venues. So we start out at the library, and that's like free programming. And so typically that's like student films and, films that might request that venue. We're lucky that we have a library that has a really nice screen. And, the room size is nice enough. In the past, I would say 2 years, our attendance at these free events has been amazing. In terms of the paid programming, we've been at AMC Hoffman for, I would say, the past 5 to 6 years, obviously not including the pandemic. And that's something we found filmmakers prefer, is to have their film shown on the big screen. So that's something we've always tried to keep that venue because of that. And then we have another venue that's further into Old Town Alexandria, called the Lyceum. So, typically we do have about 3 venues. And, Brittany mentioned, like, if you don't have anything running parallel, then it's easier to kind of go to each event. For us, that requires us to have a decent sized staff to be able to manage, right, all of those venues. So yeah. So I think for us, generally we have a staff of about 5 to 7. We've been trying to grow that so that we have kind of subcommittees, right? Programming, you have different committees, and then you have committee leaders and then subcommittees. So that's kind of a new thing we're doing so that we can then continue to kind of branch out in our outreach. But I think for us, you need, we have a chair, vice chair, executive director. We have social media staff. We have a graphic designer, someone that does communications, and then fundraising. And I would say all of those, kind of at the level we're at right now, all of those we need.
Yeah. In your case with the Alexandria Film Festival, you have a lot more moving parts. So obviously, there's going to be a lot more work that's got to be done.
A lot more work, yeah.
So how do you guys stay in sync? How do you guys know that we all need to be on the same page here?
Well, so everyone has a job, so to speak, right? Like everyone that maybe is, so like as the chair, I am in charge of operations. Our vice chair is in charge of the PR communications committee. Our executive director is in charge of our fundraising committee. We also have another committee that handles the programming, which is the submissions, and the scheduling of outreach events. So, what's that, 5-6 people, as well as a webmaster, right, that we have. So like, you kind of need all of that, I would say, for kind of the fundraising is very important, just because you could imagine a venue like AMC would be pretty pricey, right? So, and then it also is, what would I say as well? Like, probably curating films generally costs money. And then I'm trying to think of some of our expenses. And then having venues for our outreach events. So, and then general overhead. But I think for us, again, it's sponsorships, and then we have like donation periods, and then we have grants. We're generally talking about $20,000 budget wise to put on the
Wow.
festival.
And that and is that the minimum or the max?
Well, it depends, right? Like for us, again, like, this growth over the past 18 years were, once you start to grow, your venues get larger, right? You're not going to have like one theater in AMC, you're going to have 2 that are going simultaneously. And then you're going to have another venue. So all of these things, obviously, it's more money, but also you're recognizing the growth of your festival, right? Because you're able to have these, that, like I said, like have multiple venues. So, yeah, I think that's part of why I think, and we'll see, like, the thing about it is, especially with a film festival, like, certain things you did the year before, you do reassess and say, maybe that's not going to work this year. So, we had venues. So typically we haven't done, we usually do like a venue a day, so that like no venues you're not having 2 venues on the same day. And we've done that the past 2 years, and I think it's a bit difficult to run, because we do have, like I said, we do have 5 to 7 people, but it's really not, to do 2 venues really requires a lot in terms of manpower at each event. You're talking 3 theaters going at the same time. So I think that's something we may reassess. We might do, AMC just with, 1 theater and screen the very, very best films, and then do other venues kind of that are smaller. So it really all depends. Right now, we were okay with the multiple venues, but it was a lot of work having people go back and forth. That was a lot of work. So
yeah. I mean, I can imagine, so, just because you've got all these things happening all at once. So, so not only do you need people to be there at different times and different places, but you also got to make sure everything's running smoothly. And if you're not there personally, something happens, you're kind of like freaking out. You're like, oh my God, like, what do we do here?
Right, because the main thing that would happen is something's wrong with the film, or the film's not playing, right? So you have like a crisis. We had that happen last year.
So, yeah. You told me, the last time I interviewed you, you told me that there was an issue with the projector at the AMC, wasn't there?
Yeah, okay. And so AMC has basically streamlined their process. Typically, we'd have a projector in the booth that we have for many, many years. He was able to get the DCPs and then put them on like a just one single disc and play it, but also able to kind of prompt it whenever there's a Q&A. And then somehow they streamlined it so that we were required to hire their independent projector. And we had such an issue with some films that wouldn't ingest, because they won't accept, I think it was, so you can have a DCP on a disc or on a jump drive.
Yeah.
And they would only be able to play it if it was on, I believe, a disc. If it was on a jump drive, we had to get backup assets. So Blu-ray, for example, but Blu-ray does not play well in a theater because there's feedback. There's a program that, you know, can get rid of it, but we didn't have anybody there to be able to do it. So we had some serious technical issues last year because of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Brittany, I know you've been sitting there patiently. Dara
Oh, I'm
mentioned that.
soaking it in. I love it. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, what I was gonna say, because in your case you're operating on a much smaller budget than what Dara and the Alexandria Film Festival are working on. I mean that probably requires a lot of tough decision making on your part, just based on the fact that you've got less to work with, but you've got just as much of a workload and a lot more potential in terms of the film festival. So can you maybe talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, we can see how it grows, but I can speak on thus far. Like, it's tough on a micro budget. You do have to choose, like, am I really gonna buy another like Coroplast sign insert this year, or can that go? Am I going to do a full program brochure, or am I going to do a rack card with a QR code because that's cheaper, which is what I went with this year.
Yeah,
It is tough because like pretty much every penny has to be accounted for. So when you're working on a micro budget, you can't just throw money at a problem. So you have to use your head a lot more if something crazy arises. But I will say I can make a screening happen anywhere. My entire screening setup fits in the back of my Prius V. So like I can just like pop that thing up and have it ready in like 20 minutes easy. Like so that's cool. But I've also like incorporated more venues that already have the setup or they have people there that know how to do it. So like this year we did community night at Dissolver. That's a brewery in downtown Asheville, and the dudes who run it and own it, they are filmmakers and are musicians, and the AV quality in their venue is very important to them. So they like popped up their own little setup thing. They had the two speakers on the sticks, and they had a projector ready to go, living on a tripod. And they were just like, "Can you bring your fold-out screen?" And it's like the literally an old classroom style, like you drag
yeah,
it up and then like hang it on the hook. And we just like popped it up, and like the thing that took the longest and always takes the longest is putting out the chairs.
yeah,
So but I'm also blessed because I know a good bit about AV as well. I'm a stagehand for my day job. I've worked in film a long time and am just into technology. So I'm very lucky on that front. Plus, since I'm not taking features, I don't as often have to deal with the DCP issue. Like they email me their shorts in
Okay.
.mp4 format, and one of my team members who isn't me, he's our senior programmer, so he helps pick the movies too. His name is Rome, but he always edits together the screener for me. So that's one of our paid roles that I just always like want to be sure about. But he goes through, he puts it all in one singular screener and adjusts the levels of audio, like not within the piece itself, but like the overall piece so that different movies don't sound drastically different from each other.
Right.
And
Right.
then he does the export in a .mp4 format, and we plug my laptop into my projector or whatever projector's there, and we screen it right there on the spot. So um I feel like that does help. Like one year we did a BYOF and somebody tried to do QLab, and that seemed really cool. So it's like you drag the files into like this sort of playlist thing, but it's like specially software engineered to like do that. But
hmm
I just am not familiar enough to with that software to not have a projectionist on the fly able to use that software. So
Yeah.
usually we just like about 2 weeks before the event, Rome edits everything together, so that gives us time to review and like do test runs and tech
Yes.
rehearsals and things. And that's gone really well for me. But I'm also like surrounded by tech people because this year our venue Haiku I Do is a wedding venue, and they had like some stuff there, but I had my boyfriend be the AV guy, and because he is so great, he offered to do it just out of the kindness of his heart. And I had a professional AV guy there to set up the sound and audio and run like a mixing like the sound mixer thing from behind the screen with a rear projection setup. So
Was your
uh
was your wedding venue outside or inside?
it the mixer part was outside because it was like this giant Zen garden, and then the
Yeah.
stringer itself was inside. It was called Haiku I Do.
Okay. Hmm.
Hmm.
Oh,
And
I
oh my
get it.
god,
I do. I get it now.
Haiku I Do. Yeah. And yeah, that was a sponsored space, which I can't even believe. It was so beautiful. It was crazy. I haven't gotten the
I
pictures
can
up quite
imagine.
yet because I just haven't had that much time to sit at my computer, but oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And Yeah, we had a volunteer photographer who comes through. His name is Jeffrey, and he just loves the event and is a very talented photographer person. So he always just brings his camera with him wherever he goes, kind of. And he's like, "Oh, just send the pictures and take pictures for you." And he's been doing that for several years now. So that was cool. And then my workshops, actually, I had some programming staff help with that as well. So most of my staff was pre-production, I guess, but they are part of a collective called ABL Film, and they're like a little organization here in Asheville. And I actually delegated the designing of the workshops to them. So they contacted David Stapp of Zero Point Creative for that, and then they themselves just sat in and was like, "We'll talk about nano budget filmmaking because we know how to do that." So, and that was about it.
That's really helpful that you have that background already in film, because that helps the contacts you can get. That's really, especially with the technical aspect of playing films, which of course to me is pretty big, but that's amazing.
Yeah, and you're like listing off like, "Oh yeah, we have a social media person or a webmaster." Like, I'm lucky enough to have those skill sets as well because I have a background in marketing too.
Yeah.
So I would love to have a little intern to do my social media for me. I can't do TikTok. I'm not like silly and like I don't know. Maybe TikTok's not silly, but I just
I
think about
will,
like the dances and things.
yeah, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, well, our goal was to one time get like someone young enough to do Snapchat, because it's interesting what you said about like some of these other social media platforms that are kind of cool and hip, but generally only a certain age group knows how to operate it, well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why one of the things we've done is reached out to universities for social media, like supplemental social media help. So I don't know if you've looked at that as a possibility, but like, and we had one, actually 2 years in a row, we had George Mason University help us with the social media campaign, and then to help us raise money. And so that was, what they could do was just amazing. So
Yeah, so I'm at the very beginning of a partnership with Western Carolina University. So we
mhm.
just did our collaboration thing where for our feature spotlight, they have a student film festival. So the winner of their student film festival opened for our feature spotlight, and that was like an agreement we had in advance.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so like, and it's really cool because the professor,
very cool.
Stephen Kiss, he just like reached out to me. And there's also a couple of filmmakers in the Asheville community who are professors at Western too, because it's about 40 minutes from us. But yeah, I'm hoping I can pull interns. One of my dreams, I don't know for sure if I can make this happen. Steve, if you're listening, listen. Um, I would really love to have a student block, but like it's a class for the students to run it where they are the ones who choose the programming and they just have their one little block to practice
Oh,
within the full festival. I would love for that to be somebody's like class or senior project or something because I think that'd be cute and be like part of making your own film festival means you can't just pick your films. You have to like not just pick your friends, and I feel like that could be a nice little lesson for the young people, and then they could do social media and I wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. But like also our demographic's a lot younger than yours. So you mentioned like 45-year-old women. My demographic is like 21 to like 35-ish year old people.
interesting. Okay.
So
Okay.
like we're very young, like we're doing like the hipster thing. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's
yeah,
no offense. That's
Asheville's
what I
young.
associate with Asheville. Yeah.
yeah, totally. I'm not offended at all. Like
Yeah.
Portlandia is basically Asheville-landia.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's basically Portland, out in the mountains.
Yeah.
That's how one person described it to me. A while ago. And plus, Asheville is, I mean, literally, like you can't walk down the street without passing a brewery. Like
Yeah.
Oh, really?
yeah. I mean, our first, because I live in Charlotte, so the first brewery that we got was probably like I think 2011 or 2012, and I believe it was, and I believe it was a brewery that originally started in Asheville. And I remember someone making a joke saying, Asheville is importing all of its breweries into Charlotte now, and it's just gonna expand because I went to school in Greensboro, and we had one brewery, and that was Natty Greens, and now check, they're like a lot more than one, I should say. But Brittany, you did mention something quite interesting about programming because when it comes to organizing a film festival, obviously there's going to be like a theme or a genre that you kind of focus on. I know in your cases, both of y'all, you guys do indie. How do you think you can define like what films would kind of would kind of fit for your festival, because indie is such a huge umbrella term. It's kind of like, I mean, even if I were to say sci-fi or horror or historical, I mean that's a huge umbrella. So maybe talk about that and how you decide like what films fit the criteria and which ones don't, but come close. And either one of you can go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd say, first of all, I think, as you know, Luca, we accept all genres, of course. But I think just by nature of the filmmakers that we attract, it's generally independent, not distributed by anyone. So we get young, up and coming, and then burgeoning filmmakers. They're really just starting out. This is maybe their usually first, second, or third film. And I think that, it's not as explicit, but I think, we kind of want to feature young filmmakers, the up and coming filmmakers. So I think that it just kind of goes hand in hand, and that just happens to be what we receive. Generally, we don't receive films that, obviously that, Tribeca or Sundance or whatever would or TIFF would receive, but just by the nature of the kind of festival we are, those are the films that we receive, the independent films.
Mm-hmm. So how do you figure out like which films are going to go into your festival? Because obviously, you've got a lot of these great films coming in from not only Alexandria around the country, but also around the world.
Right.
And as great as some of these films are, I mean, obviously, there's only so many spots that you can allot to each film.
Yeah, and so I think it's hard when it comes to programming. What you generally start with is like once we start the programming process, we start with anchor films. That's typically the feature films, right? Mm-hmm. Feature films that can stand on their own. And then we kind of start there and kind of fill in shorts if we need to, kind of short films, kind of if we need to, because as you know, we accept shorts and features. We like a good rom-com, which is hard to find, or a thriller, or potentially an anchor documentary. In terms of anchor films, that's typically what we might look for. I think that generally it's probably half and half short film showcases where it's like all shorts versus a feature anchor. It's just hard for us to get feature films that we think stand on their own. And so I think that's what we focus on. And if we don't get that, typically we'll go to curation mode. And so we have memberships at a couple different distributor sites. Pro Festival Scope comes to mind, that we've curated films that are features that we want to use. Because I think that's generally, when it's programming, the first thing we look at is anchor features. And then we go with, what can fill in those blocks. And then we go to shorts. So that's kind of where we start. And then we kind of break down venues. We generally have a student film showcase. We get a lot of student films. We'll have a student film showcase, at the library, maybe some documentaries at Beatley. But if it's a feature that we want to have kind of prime time, usually it's a compelling documentary, a thriller, or like a rom-com, or even a comedy if we find it. But that's kind of when we focus on doing the programming. We'll have early, if we have something early on in the day, it'll usually be like family programming. And then, maybe after 2, it may, there may be something more PG-13, kind of R-rated, kind of from there. So I think the focus really is on, our main focus is on features. It would be helpful if we only accepted shorts. That would make things a bit easier. But because we do accept features, I think for us, That's what to us kind of drives the festival. The features first, always.
Gotcha. So basically, so basically, you're looking for you're for the indie filmmaker, but you're specifically looking for indie feature films to kind of sort of, I guess, sort of be like the base layer for
The first layer. Yeah, that's
first
the
layer for what
base
you're
layer.
screening.
Yeah, definitely
Okay.
the base layer. And that's not even to say that people don't enjoy the short film showcases, because they always do. I mean,
Yeah.
they're amazing. But features to me really drive kind of the festival more. And so whenever we start, programming committee, we always start with the features. Which are the good features, which can stand on their own? Yeah.
But even then, like, when you get those entries and submissions that are feature films, I mean, even then, I imagine there's only going to be like an X number of films you're going to allow in the festival. So
Right.
So how do you figure out which ones are going to be the ones to keep and which ones are going to get that reject?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think we're flexible when it comes to, like I said, venues we've used, and also time. So, like, generally when we get the Hoffman, we'll have 2 days, and we'll go from maybe 10 in the morning until about midnight. So typically, I would say that if there's a feature that's a really good feature that really deserves to be in the festival, we are hard pressed to not be able to find a place to show it. So even though there's, I don't know, so like I would say typically we receive about 150 films. We use the platform Film Freeway. We might receive about 150 films. Typically, the films that we believe deserve to be in the festival, it's between 40 and 50. That's a combination of features and shorts. And it's very rare for us not to be able to find a place to screen it. It's just we're usually able, if it's good enough and we feel like it deserves it, we typically are able to find a place for it.
Gotcha. So Brittany, in your case, when it comes to programming and getting films, do you kind of like to have a mix of different genres, or a mix of shorts and feature films, or do you kind of go with one or the other? How does it work for Catfly?
We're primarily a shorts festival. We always have one feature spotlight, and I don't even mean to say always, because sometimes we don't. It just depends on what we get in terms of submissions that year. But
Yeah.
we base our programming. Well, we always start with booking venues before we book any programming most of the time, unless I know a friend has a really, really good one coming. But each of our nights is a different theme. So, like, our Fancy Friday night is like high production values, like dramas, documentaries, sometimes comedies. And then our community night, which this year was at Dissolver Brewing, which their tagline is brewed until surreal, and they have all this like trippy imagery. That's where we did all our horror movies and thrillers and weird experimental things that would make people that aren't filmmakers probably uncomfortable. Like and versus like Friday is usually more mass appeal kind of things. I would say, like, if you're artsy, if you could only go to one, if you're artsy, go to community night if you want to like see the weird, strange things. But if you just want to see some like good movies that you're sure you're gonna like, you should go to the fancy night and just dress up and enjoy those. And then we'll do our feature on like the last day of the festival. And like part of that started just because I was so tired by the last day of the festival. I was like, feature matinee, that feels like the best way to do this. But it really has broadened our ability to bring back shorts filmmakers that we've had in the past. Like our feature spotlight this year, A Song for Imogene by Honeyhead Films in Wilmington, that same feature started as a short, and it got its first screening at Catfly event called Films on Tap, which, Luca, we've talked about this before, but they're a collaboration with a group out of Charlotte who pairs beers with short films based on tone and themes and stuff. And yeah, so they were a Films on Tap film. 4 or 5 years later, I don't know, they'll have to tell me exactly how long it was, but several years later, they made that into a feature, and then that was our feature spotlight. So, like, it gives it a lot of room to come around full circle. Like, and there's another feature, I won't name it because I don't know what state the filmmakers are in on it, but we screened like multiples of these filmmaker shorts, and they have a feature script that I've read, and I'm like, the second it's done, you need to send that to me because that's gonna be the feature spotlight, you know. Like we probably wouldn't even open up submissions whatever season that one is done for. But yeah, I mostly stick to shorts. Sometimes it's based off the venue. Sometimes it's based off each other, and sometimes it's based on what filmmakers are in the block that I feel like need to meet each other. Because since we're so localized, most people come. Like, I think we had 17 out of 23 filmmakers come to at least one of the days last weekend, and most of them brought like another crew member with them. So it was like a huge networking thing. And sometimes I put people in the same block just because I like this filmmaker, and this filmmaker I like too, and they seem to have a similar style. They should meet each other. And my favorite thing to do is like have done that and played professional matchmaker, and then a few submission cycles later I get a film with both of their names in the credits, and I'm like, I know where that started.
So
what is I'm sorry, Luca, I just wanted to ask, what is
oh no, you're fine.
You said you have like different days for like different themes, but how long do you usually run, like on a given day?
Any programming block is usually between an hour and a half plus a Q&A usually, unless we run out of time like we did this time.
Okay. That's the worst, by the way. When
Running
you run
out of
out of
time.
Q&A time, that's really the worst.
Yeah, especially when the venues are sponsored. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to take you so long. But no, I do love the Q&As. We actually did something interesting. Like, part of it was because of the time restraint. But, like, we've had some filmmakers be like, I'm a little shy. I don't want to go up there. So, like, something we did the second night of our festival this time, and this was our host and founding member, Jeff Alexander's idea. But he was like, why don't we just have them stand up and then tell the audience to go find these people so that it's more of a conversation and it's more approachable. So we had everyone stand, and we're like, all right, we're gonna go party over here, like talk to them, foster connection, ask them your questions. And the filmmakers seemed to like it. Nobody complained, and some people actively came up and said thank you. So
I can see how you can do that in certain venues. I think, yeah, I can definitely see that. I mean, I know we have a couple where I can picture that happening, where the filmmaker is, you know, kind of on site. But if it's like at the library or like, you know, the Lyceum, little smaller venues, the consumer, you know, film goer is easily able to access the filmmaker to kind of talk to them. I could definitely see that.
yeah, and I can also see how if it's a feature film and it's just like the one filmmaker, why you would want to bring them up there and do it that way, because you don't want to bombard them. Versus like, you know, I have 10 to 13 filmmakers in a programming block. That spreads them out amongst them.
But honestly, like obviously, you know, Luca mentioned how you're definitely more localized, but I also would say, like, if a filmmaker is in attendance and that screening block ends, you know, they still have to go out with, you know, the audience, and usually does. And so they do have that ability to have access to them, you know, after the screening block, and they generally take advantage. So
yeah, that's a good point.
yeah,
I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Well, I was. It's funny because Dara, you actually asked the question that I was going to ask Brittany, so that kind of saves me some time right there.
Oh.
But I also wanted to ask both of y'all. I mean, do you like have certain themes for each year's run of the festival, or do you try to keep it kind of consistent? You know, when it comes to content programming, just so people kind of know what to expect. Say this year, this year's kind of the same as last year, or do you kind of like to mix things up a bit, kind of make people kind of wonder, ooh, I wonder where they're going this year. I wonder if they're going with more of like a dark, indie horror as opposed to, international, Brazilian rom-com like last year.
I have smaller events that like I have Catfly Halloween every once in a while, and that's only horror movies, and it's done in October, and it's a completely separate event than the spring festival. And sometimes I do like random other just idea kind of things, just to like, I like to test run new ideas just like on a small random day before I ever incorporate it into the big festival.
So
See that?
So with these small ideas, if they work, do you kind of continue with it, or do you just like figure, maybe it's something we'll just like put on the back burner and revisit it, maybe months or years later down the road?
A little bit of both. Like our BYOF bring your own film screening, that was a test run. Like we did it like as a small part of a one night Catfly Halloween, and it was a big success. And we really liked how that turned out because it's very egalitarian. You don't have to answer to a submissions committee or pay anything. You just show up and your film screens. And luckily we've always had people be entirely respectful. Like we've never had anything offensive that we've had to turn off. Like people really respond to that, and that's been incorporated into the main festival, and anytime I can do it as part of that, I'm going to, because it feels important to our mission and our brand of uplifting filmmakers to let them bypass the, so it's just whoever shows up first, and I think there's a real fairness to that.
Yeah, cool. Dara, what about with the Alexandria Film Festival? Oh, you're on mute.
I think what I would say is, so we have, I would say, in the past, probably 3 to 4 specific showcases outside of, general programming.
Mhm.
We have a Veterans Day showcase where we spotlight films made by veterans or starring veterans, and that's a free showcase. We also have a family showcase. And in the past, we've had a horror thriller showcase, and we've done student film showcases. So those, I think some combination, I would say between 3 or 4 of those, definitely Veterans Day, definitely Family Showcase, we've always had every year. And that's something that our film goers can count on, but we're talking like a very small portion of our general programming. So thematically, it's really, it depends every year. I can't say that, it's so interesting. Like, one year you get 80% documentaries, another year you get more features than you've ever gotten before. So everything is really just dependent every year. And it may appear to be like a certain theme each year, but it is all dependent on the films we receive.
Yeah, I was a judge on a different film festival called Music Video Asheville, and it's like crazy how some years like the filmmakers like their headspace. Like we get like like the year I did it, we got a bunch that was all like girl running through the woods, and then like we had another year where like at the 48-hour film project where there was like a weird murder in everyone, but like nobody's talking to each other. It's just like part of the zeitgeist, the local zeitgeist, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. 48-hour project for us is, we've done events with them in the past, but I think they have 2 to 3 chapters kind of in our area, and we've had some of their films submitted, but it's really grown. So it's really interesting.
Well, it's interesting that both of y'all mentioned that, because it does lead me into my next question. How do you work with other festivals in the area? Because obviously Alexandria is right across the way from Washington D.C., and that has a substantial media market.
Yes.
And Asheville is well, I mean, like I said before, Asheville is Portland in the mountains, so there's like a huge art scene going on there. So I want to see if maybe if y'all can talk for a little bit about how do you how do you work, or how do you collaborate with these other festivals in your respective areas?
Oh, go ahead.
I would just say that it depends on, for us, manpower. So there are so many, as you mentioned, you're completely right. There are so many film festivals just in DC, and they're very specific. Environmental Film Festival, I think there was one where I think you would have had to have shot the film on a Samsung camera or video using your phone. Like there was a festival for that. Like there's so many very niche film festivals in DC, and, even outside in Northern Virginia, that it creates this really great opportunity to have partnerships where you kind of promote each other and kind of share interest in your individual festivals. So as it happens this year, we've had the manpower to be able to do that. And so we've actually partnered with a couple film festivals in the area where we have a mutual, social media agreement where we attend their festival, they attend ours, and we promote them on social media. One in particular that's starting this month is the DC Docs Festival. And so that's something that we're really focusing on. It's been on our list to do. We've done it in the past, but not consistently. So for us, it was just manpower, somebody that was able to do it, make that initial meet, find the festival, and get them to agree on a partnership, and then work on what those terms might be.
Gotcha. What about in your case, Brittany, with Catfly?
Asheville is small, so a lot of them are my friends already. Um, or like, they're close enough to me. I can send them an email and they'll know who I am and who they are. Like sometimes I try to be like, hey, when's your thing? So I don't pick the same day or whatever. Or like if I see the same day, I'm like, all right, don't do that day because like I want to go to it too, honestly.
Yeah.
But also there's not a lot of other film like festivals here. There's Catfly. There's the 48-hour film project, and then there's the music video Asheville showcase. And then there's like Connect Beyond Festival, which is like a blend of like literature, film, and music, I want to say. And that's always really cool, but all the vibes of each of those things is so different that like it's easy. I don't feel like I'm ever competing with them. It always feels like it's a symbiotic thing. I hope they feel the same way about me.
So have there been any instances of collaboration? Because I did an interview recently with Stephanie Hickman from Different Strokes, the that collective based in Asheville. Have there been any like talks about collaboration or cross pollination, anything like that?
Well, we did do a homegrown films block in Connect Beyond Festival one year. I want to say it was like 2 years ago, and then me and like another Catfly person moderated a panel on. I want to say it was indie film. It might have been something else, because it was a long time ago now. But that was pretty cool. We have a lot of improv comedians in the area, and we screened a bunch of like improv based movies. Maybe not a bunch, but several improv movies. So I'd like to collaborate with them. I don't know. I've done ticket trades with folks before. Like I said about Music Video Asheville, I was a judge on their panel one time, and sometimes I can meet people on those panels who'll be judges for mine too. So I hope that answers the question. I feel like I'm rambling.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. I mean, it's just so important to kind of have that connection with other organizations, because you kind of it's so easy to kind of think that this festival is the only one in town, right? And while that may be a good thing, it kind of at the same time it kind of makes you feel bad for the other festivals that are trying to get their name out there, like like you said, like the 48-hour film festival that that some people may not be aware of, which actually does lead me to my next question. So you guys have had a substantial number of years under your belt in terms of running these film festivals.
Yeah.
If let's say, like, let's pretend like if you were a guest speaker at a university and you were giving a chat about how to organize a film festival, and someone raised their hand and said, yeah, I've got a question. I'm thinking about starting my own film festival, but I don't know where to begin. What would you tell them? What advice would you give them?
Oh my gosh, I'm literally like developing like a lecture to go along with the film tour about this, because I'm trying to like I want to go on a film tour like a band, but I want to fund it by doing lectures on how to start your own film festival and submit to film festivals at universities to fund it. And I don't know, I feel like empowerment is kind of the first step for youth. Like I need to start my thing with like, yes, you can do it. Like, don't tell yourself no. Even if you have $0, there are enough people that are probably willing to help you. And then the next thing is make sure that you have your venues before you start selling tickets, because it would be a nightmare to oversell or like not actually have a space when the time comes or things like that. So those are my two things that I would start with.
Gotcha.
Well, yeah, I think for me, and again, I don't have the experience Brittany has, but I would say just from what I've learned so far, I think if I were to start a film festival, it would definitely have a theme, right? It would have a theme, maybe a couple different genres that I might want to focus on with an eye towards filling a need for a certain fan base. And I think one of the things I would focus on is a communications plan and a social media plan. What Brittany said about venues is absolutely correct, but in terms of getting the word out there, I think that's my initial focus. Getting the word out there, and then if you have like a theme, right, and then you can potentially start up by kind of doing more of a curation focus, and then ease back into a submission, focused film festival.
Well, another thing that kind of strikes me too is from chatting with the both of y'all is that there also needs to be a strong business acumen, in terms of running the festival, because obviously, like I said before, I mean, you're going to need the money in order to kind of get things off the ground, even if it's on a shoestring budget. So I was wondering if maybe you can talk about like what would be like. I guess the best way to phrase it is, what would be like the most important business skill you would need in order to kind of get, this film festival project off the ground? I think you guys might have mentioned it already, but I just want to hammer that point home.
I would say fundraising.
Would that include like being able to like, write, was it proposal writing or
grant writing? Grant writing. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Yeah. So in terms of like business acumen, I think you want people, because we're all volunteer, so you want people with certain backgrounds that have kind of done this maybe in another space where they can transfer it to the nonprofit world. So yeah, I think being able to write grant writing is very specific too, but having that financial / professional nonprofit experience is extremely helpful. Like when you have volunteers, yeah. But fundraising to me is the number one thing.
Yep.
I'm not good at that part. I'm still learning. I would just say confidence and perseverance in a very soft skill kind of way. Like, business owners can't give up, Treat yourself like a business owner. You can't give up because you put your eggs in this basket. Mine was very first time I funded it with my tax return. So I don't know. That was the thing that I did very first, was just like, oh, I never really had this money. It's okay if it all goes away. Oh, and don't be scared. Just do it.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people, especially young people, when they're getting started, they kind of feel like intimidated, and they feel like, there's just so many moving parts. I don't know what to focus on, and they kind of get overwhelmed pretty easily. But I think, but I think it's something that can be done. You just need to be able to organize and prioritize where you're going. And obviously the big one, like you both said, was making sure you have your venues in place, because obviously you need a place to show these movies. So if you can get these places first, the rest will sort of fall into place afterwards.
Yep, you need a place and you need stuff to screen. That's how I feel. Like, you could hypothetically do it for free, in my opinion, because if you like, I don't know. That's why I always like going to like breweries, is because they are looking for programming and like event stuff to do, versus like a place that really only has their time to sell you. Like, I don't know, like we've been in a venue before where we had to like bring in our own alcohol and like all this other stuff. And that was our most expensive venue, versus like ones where like, they're like, as long as people are buying beers, I don't care what y'all do. Like, that is my favorite venue to have.
There's just something about beer and film that go together,
Yeah. But also it's a different kind of party than the party you're throwing, Dara.
Yeah, no, I totally no, but we've, it's funny you mentioned that. We've done, partnerships with the local brewery here, where we did fundraising efforts, more outreach. This year we're going to try and do an outdoor event. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that goes, and what the future looks like about holding future events there where we could feature the film festival. Because I think we've done outdoor events once before, and I think it's helpful. The problem is that our festival's in mid-November, right? Right. So I think that if we have a summer outdoor event, we can kind of see that's a better gauge of kind of, are people interested in that? You don't have, I think you have it more in DC than you do Alexandria, having these outdoor film events. And some people think they're pretty cool. So,
I love sitting on a blanket and watching a movie. That's fun to me.
Yeah, and we've thought about doing a kind of drive-through opening night event. Ooh. Something that we've thought of. It all depends on funding and what we can do. Pardon me, I have a little cold, but I think that things like that will only, help us expand. But as I've told you numerous times, Luca, it's all about personnel for us.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So this actually does lead me into the next question. So, so in terms of running, a film festival, and you're doing it year in and year out, how would you define success? In terms of running a film festival.
Happy people that attend it when they're like, "Oh, that was so great." And I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah, I think for us, it's a technical victory, of course, but other aspects are the quality of films. I think is something we pride ourselves in, and filmmaker satisfaction. That they had a good experience, especially, and I've mentioned we get a lot of local filmmakers, but the ones that come from outside our area, that they do have a good experience, felt listened to, felt good about the production of the entire festival. Because we give our filmmakers free passes, they can see whatever they want. So we really encourage filmmakers to, go to our different venues and watch films, and then they can kind of see as a whole, okay, do we put on a good product? So I think that's one of the things, the filmmaker experience, we focus on feedback for that. But also we want kind of and it may be minor, but just kind of an increased audience numbers is what I would say. Yeah. Where you feel like interest is growing. Like seeing growth is, to me, like you're thinking, okay, we're building on something, we're continuing to build on something. And so you kind of feel like, okay, all this work is worth it. Let's push on, let's get more people, let's do more stuff. Yeah.
I always feel successful when I've overcome the challenge of doing it at all, because there are, like you said, so many like technical challenges. It is like being on a set where like you get to location and you're like, all right, how are we going to do this, y'all? And then like, if you have a good game plan, we're just like, all right, everybody, this is how we're doing it, like we talked about. And then like, it all works out great. So to me, a smooth event is a successful event. Like if there were no like major dramatic issues, then I feel like I've overcome the challenge that I've given myself of doing this again. And there it is. We did it. Hooray.
Yeah. But, and also like, I mean, as you, just to piggyback off what you mentioned, like being able to reduce any perceived technical challenges you may have that weekend by being able to deal with it a week or two before, so you don't feel like you have to worry about that during the festival, is to me a big thing. Because you never want a filmmaker to feel like, their film, their baby is, or have them see it, not in the format they had hoped, or something goes wrong technically with their film. Like you never want that.
Yeah, that happened to me one time, and I just felt so personally guilty. I felt terrible because like their aspect ratio was just a little bit different than everybody else's, and the export screener just like auto whatevered it, so it was like punched in a little bit, and I was just like, the whole time the movie was playing, I was just like, I want to die. I can't believe this is happening. I hate this. Okay. But
yeah, no, it's the worst. That's the worst thing. And then, the film goer is like, what the heck? What are we watching? What is this? Like I think we had one film one year where it was a foreign film, Pakistani film, and no subtitles.
Oh no. Oh,
that is the worst.
I wish I could figure out a way to make my film festival more accessible by having like monitors that if people needed subtitles, they could take the monitor and still see the movie in their lap with subtitles.
Yeah, we've thought about that as well. What we can do, because some filmmakers, their film does come, with closed captioning available, but it's rare, and we've thought about requiring it.
Mm-hmm.
We've thought about that because we do want our films to be accessible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have like literal hearing damage or anything, but I work at concert venues. Like, I can't hear anything. I always have captions on my
Yeah.
TV at home. Like,
for me, it's years of earphone use in a commute. So yeah.
like I can't hear
Hearing is
anything
not
anyway. So I'm
great.
sure other people can. Like,
Yeah,
but
my
also
hearing.
like it does affect the aesthetic of it or whatever, But also, I wanted to be accessible to maybe people who are deaf, legitimately.
Right.
So that actually does lead me to my next question. So how are you making these film festivals more accessible to people? Because obviously we're starting to see more a growth in audience among demographics that we probably never would have thought about in years past. And you guys, in Brittany, you mentioned it, two people who are deaf or hard of hearing. Obviously, there are going to be additional accommodations for them that people such as myself or Dara wouldn't necessarily need. So is that something that's kind of come into conversation, or has that already taken place, or what?
I have the thought in my mind. That particular thing hasn't been addressed yet, but I try to always pick venues that have ramps. Like, it's just as simple as, is there a ramp here?
Mhm.
Yes, awesome.
Yeah, and because we've thought about that in terms of, obviously, I mentioned our demographic skews older. And so older people might have health challenges. And so we have someone in a wheelchair, we never want them not to be able to access the screening venue. And, we've had screening venues in Old Town, which, as the name states, has older structures. And so if it has steps, but it doesn't have a working elevator or anything to allow ease of access to the venue, then we won't use it, because we have, a demographic that is something, it's something, because of our demographic, it's something we have to anticipate.
Gotcha. Now, another thing that's come to mind is the fact that when I've spoken with both of y'all, you've mentioned how you've had to deal with with running a film festival during the pandemic when everything was shut down. And I did an interview recently with the writer Rodney Stringfellow, and we were talking about AI. But I want to ask y'all, do you let me set this up first. So first of all, do you still see film festivals as relevant or as important now, seeing as people have access to movies where they can just, if they want to, kind of just queue movies up and then they can have their own little film festival on Netflix? Or do film festivals still play a role in the post-pandemic world?
I mean, I feel like most film festival films haven't gotten distribution yet, so you couldn't watch it if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Because that's like part of their festival run, is to find a distributor.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Also, community is always good.
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of film festivals, I think maybe when I think about the past 3 years and I think about films that I want to see ultimately once they kind of get a distributor and hit distribution, is Cannes is the only one that I think of as relevant. But the larger scale kind of film festivals are like, what if you're thinking Sundance? I vaguely keep track of that. I feel like it's a lot easier to get your movie in some kind of distribution deal. I've seen Prime Video. We've had filmmakers that submitted whose films they were able to get a deal where they were on Prime Video, like shorts or features, and we had, we asked them to take it down temporarily while the festival is going on. But yeah, it seems a lot easier to get your movie out. It's just I think that's one of the things I've noticed since the pandemic, that people, unless it's a certain type of film, people don't necessarily feel the need to go to the theater anymore. They got more comfortable watching films at home, and it was okay, especially those of us that do like more independent foreign films. So it's like I can just watch it at home. So I think that's kind of changed, where the anticipation to kind of see it or expect to see it in theaters is no longer there.
I would rather see it at a film festival than at a theater also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how do you guys work to counter that? Because a lot of people have said, why get dressed up and, spend X number of dollars and go to a theater when I can just do this from the comfort of my own home? Like, what would be your rebuttal to that sentiment?
That's a good point.
If you had to make a pitch
like this at home.
Well, I think, I don't know. It's hard to say, right? Because I think with us, I remember a time before the pandemic, where we were at the AMC Hoffman and there were people in lines waiting to go to the next screening of this big budget film. And, ever since, when the pandemic ended, that crowd of people just is not there anymore. But I always view that as separate from a film festival, because I think they're different experiences and expectations, right? You're not going to have the Q&A right after the film. You're not going to have you're not watching multiple films. So I think that, I'm not worried as much about the film festivals, to be honest, because I think the product is different, and you get a different feeling out of it. So it's just separate. I don't think the pandemic really is going to change that, and I know there are online festivals, but the actual in-person experience it's different.
I don't know if I can think of an online only festival that wasn't like pandemic requirement kind of thing.
Right.
I'm sure there are, but
yeah, I'm sure there are, and maybe those that they might have in-person events but want to make it more accessible to people in other states or whatever. So they maybe offer some online, but
that is fair. It'd be cool to be able to.
It's different. It's just different.
Yeah, at the concert venue I work at, we're working on putting in a live stream capability of the concerts to make it more accessible to people not in your area, or if maybe they just couldn't go because of work, they could catch the end of it. So that would be an interesting way of doing it. But I guess that's kind of the same thing. Why would you go to an in-person concert when you could live stream it online? I think the answer is the atmosphere.
Totally the atmosphere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like how they live stream Coachella. It's like, yeah, it's great, you can watch it, but it's it's not the same as actually being there.
Yeah, I remember that. I think they did that on is it X now? I remember seeing that on Twitter at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it's nice if it's like, oh, that's my favorite band and I can't go. I guess I'll watch it in live stream,
Yeah,
Or like, I live 9 hours away from this venue. I guess I'll watch it on live stream. But also, I wonder, so this is kind of more in the film realm of things, like indie filmmakers looking for distribution, like as a simile or I forget the other word, but like to self-taping for actors. Like, are people just like sending them directly to distributors now, the way that actors don't have to go in person to do casting calls anymore? I don't know the answer to that, but I do wonder if that's like more of a trend.
Yeah, and that's actually a pretty good point, because because especially with with the advent of platforms like YouTube and Zoom and all that stuff, it's become a lot more easier for creative individuals to kind of get their work out there without necessarily having to go through something like, say, like a film festival or anything else in order to get distribution. Because
it's expensive to go to a film festival, like pay your submission fees, travel, have hotels for if it's places that don't offer accommodations or mileage or whatever. Like, It's hard to do that. You have to dedicate an entire portion of your film budget to being able to do that.
Yeah, and I remember talking to one filmmaker. He was like, and the way he said it was pretty blunt, but it was very profound. He was like, why would you bother submitting your film to a film festival? Why subject your film to scrutiny from all these judges who don't necessarily share the same vision or definition of artistic value that I do? Like, why would I go through all of that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but if they're doing their research on the festivals they're submitting to, like they're supposed to be doing, then it'll be okay because they'll only submit to ones that are a match and not just like blindly shooting everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. So another thing that I wanted to ask, because it came up when I had my conversation with Rodney Stringfellow, is the role of AI. Have you seen or have you heard anything about how AI is playing a role in how film festivals are operating these days, or do you think that's something that's going to happen in the next few years? Because it's already starting to make its way into the filmmaking process. Because I think what was it, like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Scarlett Johansson said she was going to sue a studio for them using I think an AI generated version of her voice.
Yeah, our voice. Yeah.
And they did it without her permission. So
Yeah, she should sue for that. I feel like I don't know. I use AI on the logistics planning side of things. Like, can you give me a 2 week out social media schedule for a film festival? This is my prompt voice for a film festival that has indie shorts, and then it'll like write me out a schedule. Or like, can you start me
Oh,
off a press release about like here are the dates, here's what I'm doing. Like, can you make this press release sound better, more professional? I think is like the prompt word for it. Like, so I use it for that kind of planning stuff. Like, how far in advance should I plan each step of what I need to do for my film festival? And then it's like, well, how much time do you have until the event date? And then it like will generate things like that. But as far as selecting movies, I will always use people because I don't think that an AI generated like submissions judge is appropriate for what I'm trying to do. But as far we've screened a movie that was made almost entirely of AI. My friend David made it for the 48-hour film project because he challenges himself to be a one-man band. That's usually what he calls himself. And he did an AI generated thing where he like filmed himself and filmed some trippy things. And I mean, obviously it was like, oh, I'm tripping out and that kind of thing. But I would love to have somebody do a workshop on incorporating AI into filmmaking. Like, I know I want to talk about the ethics of it because I know it's really controversial. I want to talk about the how and the why. I'm very technologically like into new things, so I would really love to see where it's going to go. But I don't want it to go in an unethical direction.
yeah. We haven't had any experience with AI. I think if we had a younger executive committee, we might have done some of the things that Brittany mentioned, like just to prep for the festival. We're just not cool enough or hip enough.
Feel free to steal those ideas. If you're on Microsoft, you can use Copilot for free if you use Outlook or whatever.
All things I did not know. So this is something I didn't know, but in terms of filmmaking, we really haven't seen it yet. It'll probably pop up more in the future, I guess, as they're kind of, nailing down ways to use it, but no experience, honestly.
I mean, do you think that's something that you might consider using as a tool?
I could definitely see that. Like everything she mentioned, like, yeah, that would be very cool. Like, but just haven't. I hadn't even thought about it, but no, it's a great idea.
Sometimes when my brain's broken, I use it to write captions for things. Like, I'm like, just please write this caption for me. My brain can't make one. Brain no work. Sentence is bad. Grammar not good.
But I mean,
And it'll make it sound nice.
but another thing that I want to mention too is the fact that obviously we're going to start seeing more AI generated films. And Brittany, you already mentioned your friend made one. Do you think that's going to impact the way that that films in these film festivals are being judged, or is it just business as usual?
I think it depends on how like the greater society leans on AI and even your programmer's individual opinions on it. Because some people even now are like, that's not art. That's just like replications of other people's art, all combined together, which I mean it is because it's basically a search engine for images when you're using it for that method. But also like there might be some people who are like me who are like, whoa, that was so innovative. I can't believe he incorporated all that cool stuff into this film that he shot all by himself. Because like as far as accessibility goes, I think AI will help people make more movies if maybe they don't have, friends to, hold the boom pole for free or whatever.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how it's gonna potentially transform film. I can't even fathom. I'm really anxious to see what changes there are in the future.
I highly recommend the 3-part series from Freakonomics about AI. And part
Okay.
1 is like, can AI make a joke? And it like talks about how like it doesn't have the subtleties and the human emotion to really make a joke. So whenever it does, it's kind of like a weird, random, like off thing. And it may never be able to get to the point that it can write true believable dialogue just because it doesn't have true human emotion behind it.
Right.
But it was a very interesting like 3-part series, and it
I would
was
check it out. Yeah.
yeah. And it was actually one of the guys from NPR filling in for the main host of Freakonomics when they did that series. So,
Okay.
but one of the cool things, like everybody's freaking out about their jobs being lost too, which that's a valid fear. Everybody, I'm not saying you're wrong or anything, but that was talking about how when women were telephone operators, like that was the first real like empowerment, like women in mass were able to leave the home to do that particular job. That job obviously went obsolete, and they're like, oh no, all the women are going to have to go back home because they don't have that job anymore. No, they all pivoted to, like, the rate stayed the same of women in employment. They just pivoted the type of work that they did after that happened. So I kind of agree with the podcast that I think that will happen for us filmmakers, is that yes, our jobs might not look exactly like they used to, but I do think they will still exist. They will just pivot in a different way. Because most of those women who were telephone operators became like receptionists and secretaries and things like that because they had that greater technological skill and the pathway to be able to go into the workforce already pay for them.
Well, okay, so I guess that's my question, which might be answered by this podcast you mentioned. But so do you see AI and its effect on movies as kind of improving the movie making process, or kind of replacing kind of what we now see as kind of valuable tools like certain actors or background people or things like that?
I don't think that WGA or SAG will let that happen with
Yeah.
replacing actors.
Yeah.
Which more power to them. That is very true and good. I don't know. I feel like it's a tool like the internet. Like, some things will get better, some things will get worse.
Okay.
And whether it's good or evil just depends on how you use it. But it's basically just the next iteration of the internet, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I really can't fathom kind of what's next with movie making, but I am interested. I'm interested to see.
Like, is penmanship as big of a deal now that everybody types on a computer?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
It
a fair
hasn't been for a while.
qualifier. I might get some heat for that, but I don't know.
No, it hasn't been for a while to me. Yeah.
So I found a link to that episode that you were talking about, Brittany. I put it in the chat just so
Thank you.
just so you can take a look at that. But but you're absolutely right, because we have no idea of where AI is going in terms of the filmmaking process. Now, now when I spoke with Rodney about it, we went into a lot more detail, and I'll send you guys a link to that episode when it drops in the next few weeks.
I definitely want to see it.
But and it was such an in-depth episode, because the way that AI has been built, it's been built as the sort of wonder kid, the new kid on the block who can do anything. You can make a movie with the press of a button. And the biggest concern that some people had was the fact that it'll be able to create movies that are entirely original. But upon further investigation, a lot of the material that it's pulling from, that AI is pulling from, is already existing material.
Yeah.
So then the concern now becomes to what extent will it be original? Because because I think, and I made this point too, I was like, well, the one benefit that we have as humans in terms of the creative process is that we can at least come up with something that's original. in terms of AI, it can it can only create what's already there. Now it can take things that are pre-existing, kind of like chop bits off and rearrange them, but it's not necessarily original. So that's one of those things where copyright is going to play a much larger role, because as we've already seen with Scarlett Johansson, I mean obviously if you're going, if the big Hollywood studios are going to make a movie, they're still going to need to cash in on the big names in order to get audiences into the theaters, right?
Yeah, and I also like when you mention kind of what AI might be capable of, that concerns me with a certain type of movie, only in the sense that there are movies that we enjoy that are kind of retread, kind of unoriginal. And I don't know how much I would say at this moment, how much of the film we see now is that original, I guess, is, in terms of percentage wise. So
That's true.
Yeah, and I really don't. And God, and I hate myself for this, but there's like romantic comedies, you want them to end generally a certain way. Like it would be very easy to do a retread and still have it successful or popular because it's what the audience wants to see. So that's interesting, and
it's also what people are willing to fund, because they'll only fund the safe stuff.
Exactly, safe stuff, and it's safe, right?
Yeah, because there's a formula that you follow.
Yeah,
it's kind of it's kind of like if you think about it, the way that Star Wars and Harry Potter start off, because you do have this orphan kid who discovers they have abilities, and they kind of go on this journey to discover who they are. Now, obviously, Luke Skywalker and Harry Potter, go on different. Go on different journeys, but but they both end up in the same place. So
Right.
but what I was arguing in that episode, and what I'm arguing now, is the fact that yes, we can follow the same formula, for like different stories, but we can always end up with something different.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And I think, even if AI is able to, to do that, it's not going to do it, with the same level of creativity that you would get from humans.
No, completely agree. I
I can't tell a joke. And I certainly can't take a joke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So-
so I agree. There are limits.
Yeah,
I think it should be used more for pre-production, like doing your eighths and 80 schedule
makes
building
sense.
and
Yeah,
stuff. I don't think it should be used for creativity. I think it should be used for the boring stuff. But that's just a personal opinion.
Yeah, and like I said too, the big, where the law is going to work in our favor is going to be copyright, because
Right.
because obviously, even if AI is taking bits and pieces from from places that seem familiar, obviously, if you're able to at least tell these studios, hey, you don't have my permission to use this, I didn't give you the the right to do that, that could at least kind of limit to what degree AI can play, because it's never going to go away. I mean, let's be honest here. It's one of those things where,
it's out of the box.
Yeah, it's here to stay. I mean, but but if actors and musicians can sort of like stand up and say, this is how much we're willing to allow AI to use, us and our likeness, and in Scarlett Johansson's case, our voices, that will at least kind of make studio execs think twice about how far they're willing to go. Because obviously, the studio execs are seeing this as a win-win for them.
Right.
And from our perspective as consumers, we've gotten to the point where, if it's something new and shiny, we'll run after it, regardless of whether it's man-made or AI created.
And I also think about like how Uber was artificially like subsidized by investor money in the very beginning too. Like I kind of wonder if AI is taking a similar path, because like I don't know, I was talking about this with my friend the other day, and he was just saying how it's like, oh, it's like Uber, like investors want to throw money at it because it's shiny buzzwords, and then it might like kind of the utilitarianness will weigh out more than anything creative it could ever do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of depends on what area it's in, right? Because like I work in the defense industry, and so AI has cropped up recently, and we just don't know yet what it can do and what its utility is for certain, products in different areas. You just don't know, and hope, like we talked about like movies and how it might not make that much of an impact, but I think in other areas it might. So I just don't know.
So, so I know we can go down a long rabbit trail with
I
AI.
could
So,
talk about this for the rest of the day. Like I could talk about this until it gets dark.
we'll probably have to schedule this because like I said, when I chat with Rodney, we got into it. Like
Yeah.
he threw out a point, I threw out a counterpoint. Like I said, I'll send you the link to that episode when it drops in the next few weeks, because
Nice.
it's a very in-depth episode. But I just want to go ahead and bring this panel to a close, just because I feel like we've covered a lot of territory. But before we do, if I like y'all to share like one anecdote from your experience of running a film festival, whether it could be a good story or a bad story, and what lessons you learned during that time. Either one of you can go ahead.
Well, for me, I think the anecdote I can share generally, because this is multiple situations where we've been told, but it was kind of started maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where we as a festival started investing more into filmmaker connection. And I guess from that point, the reviews we got was that the filmmakers felt cared for and that they were treated well. And it was like a community, essentially what we had, sought from them. And I think that for us, it was a real breakthrough. And, the positive feedback we got, we just kept building on it. And we knew that, we had something there in terms of kind of how to restructure the festival with, doing like maybe opening night, then maybe one venue, then another venue, and, adding in events where the filmmakers are able to, speak among each other and doing different things like that, just to kind of, shake up how the event or the festival weekend kind of unfolds. And so I think for us, it was the continuous feedback, like, we really felt, like they cared about us. We felt like, if we had a complaint, it was heard. So I think that's where kind of our focus on taking care of filmmakers was kind of what we prided ourselves in, I think.
Gotcha. Brittany, you have any anecdotes you want to share?
I'm trying to think of some, but they all just kind of rush into one giant blur of my life. So I'm not totally sure what anecdote belongs to which situation. So I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So we've chatted for quite a while. Have there been any important, I guess, tips or quirks that you've learned from one another that you think, ooh, I'm going to steal that and I'm going to incorporate into my thing?
Well, I think I'm very intrigued by doing workshops in kind of like an aspect of filmmaking, or like kind of a very niche topic, to focus on it that way. As Brittany mentioned, she's done. I think it might be easier to do and way more interesting, definitely for filmmakers, especially if it's something that up and coming filmmakers might have to improve upon to kind of improve their filmmaking. So I think in terms of like what we've thought of with workshops or panel discussions, they were more big picture, like screenwriting or, specific acting, like doing more broad rather than looking at niche. And I'm really intrigued, and I really think that's something that we might be able to pull off. Like, I think I'm very interested, and I think that's something we might be able to do, this year.
Yes, it's so fun. Do it.
No, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty intrigued by what you were saying, like kind of an extension of what I'm hoping to get from like the universities. Like that seems like a cool thing to incorporate, and I'm interested in how your staffing is laid out, because like we're all a bunch of artists here. So it's like, all right, we've got our graphic designer, me doing a bunch of things. We have our animator, then we have a couple programmers, and then I don't know about the rest of it. It's just
Yeah.
fingers and thumb.
Well, I think I have your email. Please reach out. We can
You
we
too.
can talk separately for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's in that group email, so
And I'll be
definitely.
down to Asheville very soon anyway. So
Oh yeah, we should get coffee or something. You should
yeah,
definitely come say hey. We have our music video showcase on June 28th, if that's the weekend you're gonna be here. So
okay. I will write that down.
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely look each other up and just let me know how it goes, guys.
Yeah.
And I definitely loved hearing how like your perspective from a bigger like multi-block festival. Like because I'm still like in the more beginning-y phases.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see how I could scale more towards your direction.
Yeah. But again, I think that for us, you know, while that's great doing multi venues, you know, we did realize that technical issues or other issues might crop up, and it just, I don't know, reinforced for me that just having a perfect technical experience is just kind of like in the top 3 for the running of a film festival. Having everyone's movie play well, having everything to work out with the projection, like, is just, you know, and that's why it's easy. It might be easier when you don't have multiple events, but having, you know, having single events makes you hopefully able to kind of fix it better. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, it just makes me think about having multiple venues and having technical issues is, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, no, that's the downside. Yeah.
That sucks. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my worst nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll also keep in mind too, because you guys are both operating in different markets. Because obviously, Alexandria, DC is a much bigger market than Asheville. So, so obviously, the way of doing things where you are, Dara, is going to be different from the way that Brittany does things in Asheville. And that's not a knock on Asheville. I'm just saying, like, that's just the way these things are in different cities. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys for taking time out of your busy day to be on this panel show. We did plan on having more guests on there, but but this was a really great discussion, and I think in particular, there's certain topics I think we can sort of like dig into in a lot more detail. So we'll definitely have to plan that out. And yeah, and Dara, you said you're going to be in Asheville, so the two of you meet up and let me know how it goes. I would love to see.
I'm looking at fall though, not summer, because we
I'll be here.
Fall is always like best to me for certain travel areas. So
yeah.
Are you gonna check out just like curiosity? Are you gonna check out the Biltmore Estate?
I am. Yeah, I am.
That's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, so pretty. I live pretty close to there too, so it's always like so pretty.
I will say this, Brittany. I will say this. I am envious of Asheville because you guys do have pretty great scenery over there.
Yeah,
like it's
pictures I've seen. Yeah,
yeah, it's so beautiful.
But,
I get in my car and drive, and then I'm like, I just feel so much better now that I'm looking at mountains, like when I'm on my way to work.
Wow.
Yeah, especially in the fall, like it's like, man, like that one time of the year. Yeah, it's like
the fall is my favorite season anyway. But yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, Dara, because well, I'm an autumn baby anyway, so obviously that's my default. But I was gonna say like especially in Charlotte, like in September, we have this event called the Greek Festival. And it takes place at the Greek Orthodox Cathedral in an older neighborhood of Charlotte. And man, like people come out for that, whether it's rain or shine, like people just come out and just eat some Greek food and just enjoy things. And then around October, November, that's when you get the Renaissance Festival. And man, like there's just something about dressing up in a costume in autumn that just works so well. And I'm not just saying that because it's Halloween.
Well, I think fashion wise, this is, a little bit off film, but I think fashion wise, fall is best to me. Like, that period.
I always look awful in the summer. I don't know why.
Yeah,
it's just like not my season.
I agree.
It's so hot.
Yeah.
I mean, Well, I mean, you're up in the mountains, Brittany, so I imagine things are going to be a little bit cooler than, say, like down here where we are in the city.
Oh yeah, we're about like 10 degrees cooler. That doesn't mean it's not hot and humid though. We
Wow.
live in a
That's
temperate,
true.
deciduous rainforest too, so it rains like every afternoon. Like there was a couple days I had to work outside back to back, and I got rained on for days straight. Like every day, right when I needed to work outside, it downpoured on me, and I was just like, I'm tired of being drenched. But it is overall very pretty, and it's soothing if you don't have to work in it. And you
Yeah,
can just
we got
sleep
that
and listen
rain
to
too,
it.
by the way. We got that
Oh,
rain
yeah.
too, by the way.
Are you in
Completely-
Appalachia? Where?
Well, no. Last time I was there was when I was in Charlottesville, and I can't explain why the weather in DC is so weird sometimes. But this past week, there was no rain forecasted, yet it rained every day last week. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it was a very rainy. I feel like it was last week that it was rainy. Maybe it was the week before. All the time's a blur, so I don't know. But I just know that it rained on me a lot early last month.
Excellent. Well, that's going to do it for our podcast. Thank you everybody so much for taking time to sit down and watch. And be sure to check out other reviews and interviews that we do on the show. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.